What's going on, everybody? Today is October 19th. It's Thursday, and you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And today is episode 54. So we're moving right along this year. But as always, as Carl said, we won't really know what we're doing until we get about 200. So there is the goal, 300 next year. Sometimes we'll have this figured out. So today we're talking about privacy. We're talking about what happens to your data. Can you, should you, as a business or enterprise, be using tools like ChatGPT, Bard, Claude, and others? So I will start with a hot take here. Here's my hot take. If you're a business, don't use Bard. Use Claude and probably use ChatGPT. All right, discuss. Because that's my take on this. That's my TLDR to start the conversation.
Right.
Let me say that in general, you know, there are enterprise grade chatbot services, including ChatGPT Enterprise and Bing Chat Enterprise, and they provide more information security, let's say, but you know, those are not as easy to deliver to small to medium businesses as just, okay, let's provide access to or pay for ChatGPT access or Claude access or whatever to our employees. So in order to protect, the privacy of your corporate information, you'd have to implement some policies internally about what can and can't be included in prompts. So yeah, use ChatGPT, use those things, but let people know that, you know, it is possible that with the assistance of AI, if your company's data is of interest to people who are doing industrial espionage, then, you know, you might want to be careful about what you put into the chatbot.
So here, and this is just for me and digging in deep, and I'm more than happy to have a discussion about this. I really walked away this morning as I did research for this show saying Claude is the best choice. If you're going to use one of the, and I'm not talking about building your own language model, we can go down that road because there are other options for perhaps using a open source, although there's probably some issues there with privacy and control and things like that. And we've talked about this in other shows where we said, like, where is the trade-off? You know, you don't have all the updates and safety mechanisms of a maybe Claude or ChatGPT, who has a huge system behind them, versus maybe an open source where there could be some backdoor issues. That's sort of above and beyond my understanding. But here's really what I came across with Claude, and not just to be like a fanboy of Claude, but truthfully, Claude 100% was built on the idea that it would never save your data. And it goes so far now. So does ChatGPT on you can request this. This is something I did not know. You, for Anthropic and for ChatGPT, you can re-sign, and they will sign what's called a business associate agreement, which I did not know what that was before this morning. And I said, yeah, what is a BAA? And it's a legally binding contract between a business and a service provider like Anthropic that involves access to sensitive data. It outlines the responsibilities around privacy and security that each party agrees to uphold. ChatGPT's website, not even enterprise, you can request this through their sales team. I don't know if it costs more money. I assume it probably does cost something, but ChatGPT goes as far as to say, or I shouldn't say that, OpenAI goes as far as to say, hey, if you're worried about HIPAA compliance in medical, we will sign this BAA. Anthropic says exactly the same thing. We will, if you request it, we will sign this BAA, basically saying that will likely address permitted use of data, access control and authorization, security safeguards, breach notification, auditing, return of destruction of data. So they go pretty, and now that's above and beyond just you and me and everybody else using Claude and feeling safe with it. But because Claude does not train their model on inputs, they have a constitutional AI. It is drastically different than, to me, what OpenAI is saying is, hey, we hold everything for 30 days, no matter what, even if you turn off your data and say, do not use it to train, which, by the way, you can submit like a Google form for that as well and just request that you're not part of their data set. So there's some safeguards there. But yeah, I don't know. Let's have a discussion about it, because I'm telling you right now, I'm like, nope, it's Claude. If I'm a business and I'm concerned in any one way, I'm only using Claude.
I think
Sorry,
it
David.
depends
I see you
on.
smiling.
I think it depends on like the size of your business, and in addition to privacy, there's all these other things to think about as well, because there's how integration into your service. You have customer service, your account reps, and I'm just thinking about it more from a enterprise level, because there's a couple companies that are focused on the enterprise. Now, Anthropic could say they're enterprise. I would say Cohere is one. That's their business model is enterprise level. I know with our company, it's Google, and we have how many Google reps we talk to that are available to us that help us with the different elements of their AI function. But it isn't just AI too. It's not just in a silo, because Google, we are on Google Drive, Google Docs, Excel, Google Cloud. It just makes natural sense. And then for companies who are working with Microsoft, it just makes sense to connect with Azure, then connect to OpenAI. So I think it's like, for some companies, like, is it something that we want to spend additional on? Or, and this is what the genius of the play with Microsoft and with Google is, you already have the built-in clients there. You just roll the large language model and all the things related to it in an enterprise offering, and just charge $30 per user and make even more money.
Yeah.
And
I'll
mention also that AWS through Bedrock also offers a really secure architecture insofar as when you want to put your data up to the Bedrock platform, it actually mounts a separate instance of the foundation model for your enterprise. So it's not crossing the beams at all, right? They're separated.
Same for Salesforce's Trust Layer. And in fact, there's their model when you send the data to the LLM that you're sending it to have processed, there's an internal anonymization of the data, masking, encryption of the data before it leaves your org trust layer, goes out and then comes back. So like your data never leaves your private situation.
Yeah, I think overall, what the data privacy or concerns for a business are the same, regardless of we're talking about AI or we're talking about existing data sources or technologies. You're just going to apply those compliances and governances to the technology. And as part of any of those processes, you just need clear-cut explanations of how it is complying, how your policies are governing the movement of that data or where it rests. So for enterprise businesses, though all of the players, they have their solutions. Like, and you mentioned all of them, or all the major ones anyways. So I don't think for the enterprise level, it was just a matter of waiting to this point where there is an offering, or they have their solution and it's all laid out and it's explained to the for the businesses. And so now they just got to flip the switch and get it built. I think more the question really becomes those businesses and individuals who aren't ready to do enterprise level. And I think, Brian, you were talking more about that.
That's what I want to talk more about anyway, because not to say that I know exactly who's listening in or who's in our target audience at this point. Perhaps we do have people who are listening at the enterprise level. My suspicion is we have people who have, if I had to guess our target audience from LinkedIn, we probably are talking, or there's people listening to us that are definitely less than 100 employees, and I'm going to guess less than 50 employees in a lot of cases. I currently work for a company that has less than 25 full-time employees, and then we have a bench of 1099s and things like that that are also relevant, right? But there's 25 of us. We're fairly small as a company. So what's the solution at play for we're probably not enterprise. We're probably not going to pay. I don't know what OpenAI's enterprise solution is going to cost, but I don't think, I could be wrong, I don't think that's going to end up being a cost saving measure for the company versus maybe us all paying $20 for the ChatGPT Plus. But maybe I'll be wrong about that. But I think more my point is, like, for companies that are a little bit smaller who are just going to use the off-the-shelf solutions like your Claude, like your ChatGPT, who are looking for ease of use, I think you're safer saying, like, but to be perfectly honest, I think you're safe with either ChatGPT or Claude, just to be perfectly clear there. What I would be more concerned with are what plugins are you attaching to? Where what other open doors are you opening that you're saying, like, geez, I really hope that this one thing that I type in that's kind of IP for us, that I type into ChatGPT, I hope somebody else can't type in and say, what is the IP for company XYZ, and they're going to get it. And I think, well, that's ridiculous. I don't believe that would happen. Even if you tried 100 times and 100 prompts, you would not get that result. That's not what they're talking about. So I think people are, where's the fear level versus where is the reality level? But also, people should be more fearful of these plugins and extras and Chrome extensions and all these other areas that are way, 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 way more dangerous to their business and what I think their privacy concerns are.
To your point, Brian, the difference between Bing Chat and Bing Chat Enterprise, one of the key differences is that they don't allow plugins, right? You can put plugins into Bing Chat, but you can't in Bing Chat Enterprise. The other one is what Beth mentioned, is encrypted communications between Bing Chat Enterprise and their servers, right? So any prompt that you put in is not sniffable, can't be gathered, in transit. And then there are a bunch of other policy changes, but those are the two principal differences in my view.
So one of the things that I think is key for this conversation, and for me, removes the distinction between the enterprise model and the small business model. I think in the age of AI enhancing individual capability, we're all solopreneurs. And as a business, regardless of the size of your business, you need to be thinking and facilitating conversations about what that means, because it is so easy to pop a spreadsheet into ADA, advanced data analysis, with all their customer numbers and their social security numbers and everything else that you have, and say, hey, what can you tell me about this file?
Right. But
now,
I think
they say they don't use that for training data, but but you don't want to be recognizing that that's a breach after you've breached, regardless of the consequences.
Right.
And the way to address that is to have the conversations like, okay, everybody's a solopreneur. Now let's talk about what this means.
Yeah. And to speak to exactly what your point is, the primary focus, or one of the primary steps in any data privacy policy or adhering to any compliance is it breaks down into how the data flows, where it rests, who has access to it, and then auditing. But the biggest part is training your staff, or in this case, yourself, to know how to recognize data, how to make sure that it is filtered or de-identifiable, all of those steps, and learning what your procedure is, or creating a procedure on how you interact with whatever software it is. Regardless of what it for AI, it's just any technology or any way you send data, you need to train your people or yourself on to recognize what is what and what your steps are. And that's part of any security policy. So, even if you're complying to NIST or SOC 2 or anything like that, training the people involved is a major part of that.
And I think part of that training is also identifying the tools that are being used. If on its face you explain flying is getting in this giant hunk of metal that should technically not be in the air, and you're going to say, like, it's good, well, if you look at, like, in that sense, it sounds terrifying, right? Why would I get in a plane? And then you understand the concepts and theories between the aerodynamics and lift and all these other things. Then you also look at the safety records of flying. How many planes are in the air right now? How many planes were in the air in the last 24 hours? And the safety record on that. And you go, oh my God, it's by far, one of them is the safest ways to travel in the world consistently over the last several decades, right? But if that's not the way you're looking at the problem, if you're not looking at that tool of transportation that way, and you're saying this feels scary to me, and then going off of that hunch, I think to your point, Jimmy, to everybody's point, it does come down to the training. Yes, train on what is okay and not okay for your individual business, down to the solopreneur of when you log into ChatGPT as a company, we are saying this is what we're okay with, and this is what we are absolutely not okay with. You cannot do this, this, and this. We have rules against that. You do not want to be found in error of that. At the same time, there needs to be somebody on the inside, or they need to be through training that says, these are the tools. These are the parameters they're using. This is how far you can go. And you don't probably have to be as worried or scared about the idea that your brainstorming session is now going to become your competitor's best advantage. Because there's a drastic difference between one and the other. I agree. Don't be throwing social security numbers in there. But for that matter, you shouldn't be throwing your social security numbers to your clients into anything that's not a super secured vault of whatever you're using internally. Verified databases and things like that are going to validate and encrypt over and over and over again. So I don't know. I mean, I don't. I'll stop there because I know that I'm
He's on fire now. Go, Carl.
I'm a little fired up about that.
I think
people are misinformed. I think people are misinformed, quite frankly.
Yeah. Like I think the difficulty we're seeing is, especially some businesses that we talk into, they know that there's a privacy concern, or more, not a concern, more of a question. But most companies, especially 50 people less, 100 people less, they don't have somebody who would be knowledgeable in this, or they're so busy that this is kind of, while people in the company may be using some sort of AI, they don't have a policy around it. And frankly, it's not priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, priority 4, priority 5. There's so many other things that are going on that while they hear the news and while some people are using, this is not something that is at the top of the list. And I think that's where, it's back to the echo chamber that we have. But then for a lot of people, is not even like, oh, it's still ChatGPT or nothing else. Right. And then the privacy concern comes maybe last or second to last, because there's a whole bunch of other things that are on the table, which is a really tough thing for, I think that's where like that gap between people who use, companies that use versus those that use, are just growing bigger and bigger and bigger, because we're up to date on all this stuff, but not everybody else is.
I think a lot of it too comes down to like things like at odds are always going to be convenience versus security. We take 2-factor auth, right? It's annoying. It's annoying to me that a lot of times nowadays, now the login is just the email, which I get it. They're trying to protect me. Then the next page, because they won't be next to each other, is now LastPass is having confusion on how to put the password in where it's supposed to be. So LastPass has gotten confused. Then it's like, cool, you did all that. I'm going to send you an email or to your phone to get the extra level. You got to go get that. All right, I'm on my phone. This is a pain in my butt. And now I got to go back and do it. And you're like, yeah, all of that is for my protection. All of that is for my protection. But at the convenience of moving faster and not being slightly annoyed by it. And so I kind of agree, like maybe in a good way, these conversations are just forcing or encouraging companies to have conversations internally about data privacy, which overall, I think we all agree is a great thing. If it's even starting the conversation is a great thing. If AI got you there, if ChatGPT forced you to have that conversation broadly across your company, and you put in some new privacies, whether it's 2-factor auth or whatever it is, that has nothing to do with AI, that's fantastic. That's the way it came about. Like, who cares how it got there? But yeah, I think it does go back and forth to like ChatGPT is extremely convenient. Going through the API, it's not going to be using your data at all. If you go through OpenAI's API and use GPT-4, there's no collection of data through the API. But not everybody is using it in that manner to do that. They're going to use the easier, user-friendly ChatGPT, and
Right.
that has less privacy controls. I do want to at least share this because I want everybody to know this exists. And I'll just throw it up on the screen. It's kind of a long form, but at least I can show people what it looks like. And that's that you can, in fact, ask ChatGPT or OpenAI, I guess it would be. No, actually it says ChatGPT and DALL-E to opt out of your data. And it's actually literally, surprisingly, a Google form, which I kind of felt like there'd be something a little bit better than that. But it's a Google form. And this comes right from OpenAI's site. And you can see there's a whole bunch here. And then right down in this section here, it says, we understand in some cases you may not want your data used to improve the model performance. You can opt out of having your data used to improve our models by filling out this form. Please note that in some cases, yada, yada, yada. And then it asks you for an email, your organization ID, and it even shows you where to get that from. But this is not saying like, oh, you're turning off your, that's not the same thing as going into ChatGPT and saying, turning off your history, which takes away your entire history. And yes, sort of does that. Doesn't it seem like, I mean, maybe I'm missing something, but doesn't it seem like this is the better solution? If you just want to opt out, but still have your history, when you just submit this form?
I've been sharing that form for like months to try to get people in our, especially in our company. It's like, hey, just in case, fill out this form. And if you really, really want to, also turn off the toggle, right? In ChatGPT. I was like, that would be the ultimate protection for you as much as you can possibly do, unless you're using the API or whatever else. But I do want to say this though. We're just talking about a large language model, and this kind of stuff. Like, we were finishing our AI principles, operations policy, and all that. And one of the points I made was the speed of AI is going so fast that there really isn't a best practice for it. Our SecOp teams don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm like, how do we keep up with testing tools? Like, we can't, because one tool will go over, consume the other one. There's a new one, right? So yeah, the old processes of our legal teams talking to other legal teams, redlining contracts and all that stuff, done, because within 3 months there's could be something else that takes over, and there actually is no way for you to test. So here's a story. I'm not going to tell you which tool this is, but we have our internal Confluence pages, right? So it's all supported by SSO, single sign-on, for those who don't know. So it requires a dumb 2-factor authentication too, where I have to have my phone and all that fun stuff. But there's one chatbot. I fed it an internal web page that is protected by SSO and crawled it. I was like, what? And then it gave me the exact information on that page that I know if I put it into incognito mode, it can't, like, you can't sign in unless you sign in. But this thing got every single page. So you tell me how to protect data when you have tools that they're not, the intention is not to do that, but you can do things like that.
Right. And the fix for that is not at the protection level. The fix for that is that you change what the bot is allowed to do, right? And that is like AI is advancing so rapidly that that the ease of jailbreaking is also advancing rapidly. One of the things that I want to add to the conversation is the comfort that we feel about, it hasn't happened yet. Like, it's fine, right? Like, I'm not worth it. No one's going to try to do something to me. That was a cost time analysis on the bad operators part. So the targets were like high prizes, and the cost and benefit of doing this now is rapidly decreasing, right? So not to scare anybody, but just like it didn't happen before, so it's not going to happen in the future. That is not a good metric to be using,
Right.
because the environment is changing.
Mhm.
I think that's fair. Yeah. I mean, just because your card has never been skimmed at a gas station doesn't mean
Doesn't mean,
you know
yeah.
you're totally safe, or you shouldn't be going in to pay or whatever. No, I think that's fair. Okay, so the only thing I want to add, because I know we're sort of here on, we'll try to wrap up on time today. Yesterday we went way over, so today we'll try to end on time. The only thing I would add to this is that just Bard, and what I would say for Bard is, I personally would trust Bard, and I'm just talking about bard.google.com. It has 0 login, but because
Not
it's Google,
available in Canada.
not
Sorry, I just
available,
have to
probably
put
for
that-
years.
I hate that. Nothing's available in Canada. Nothing. With the
Um,
VPN, all this stuff, but not available in Canada. Oh my
Mhm.
goodness.
Here's how I would use Bard. In exactly the same way you would use Google search. If you're okay putting the content into Google search, I think you're fine using Bard. I would not be using Bard for anything that's business related. I would be using it as a addendum or a different way to do search and gather information on relevant topics. But that's the way I'd be focusing on it. I do not see it even in the same atmosphere or the same solar system of ChatGPT or Claude, especially, or Anthropic in this particular case. So just in what I read this morning, I would just want to throw that out there. No offense to Bard, but use Bard for what it's probably good at, which is like appending your search or making your search a little bit better, or doing it in a more natural language way. And for that, I think it's a fantastic tool, or it's getting there. It's getting better and better. But I would not be thinking about it and being like, oh, these are all apples. Like, no, one's an orange. And it looks and smells a little bit differently than the other two. So that's sort of, I'll throw that in as my sort of TLDR to kind of kick things off. But I just want to make sure that I put that out there, because I was like, even when you read the privacy statement, they're pretty clear about, we're going to take all of this and we're going to keep it and we're going to save it because we want to help you with your future searches, which is what Google is all about, right?
So speaking of TLDR, I'll put it out there for everybody. TLDR, what's one step or one thing that people can do to better ensure data privacy in their use of AI?
Don't rely on your memory to think of the situation. Put together a checklist. And the checklist trigger for yourself is, I'm uploading a file to an AI, right? Or look at those situations where you are potentially at a place where you're exposing, and then go through the checklist, right? I think that's the best way.
I'm just going to echo what I think I learned from Rachel is the Reddit rule. Anything that you put in, would you put on a Reddit thread? And that
Anonymously is the Reddit rule, because that's still give you pause.
I have a slightly different angle on the TLDR, which is take my corporate experience, and what I worried about as a chief operating officer wasn't the leaking of company results or private information for this private company. I was far more concerned about ransomware and the exploits that are done to achieve access to a corporate network and lock it up are a lot more frightening than, last quarter's, data about, our financial performance got, spread on the internet, and who cared, right? I mean, I think it's much less likely that you're going to see serious consequences from putting something into ADA or into ChatGPT vision than somebody doing a phishing attack with your employees.
Right. Yeah. And for me, I'll just reiterate the kind of stuff we've been saying before. I think you should inform yourself or your and your staff on how to interact, whether that's going to be the Reddit rule, or make sure what the data privacy policy is, and just share what is safe. I'm going to assume that if you deal with like HIPAA or PII, your company is going to be data aware or data privacy aware. You just need to apply your policies to AI. It's just another data tool moving data from one point to another.
I think that's fair. And I don't want to leave Anne hanging here because she did throw this, and I know we're out of time. But does anybody have a quick comment on this? I know I don't. But does anybody have anything on Dropbox's new search?
I haven't used it. I just heard about it. If it's a matter of just searching your own data, it'll probably fall under Dropbox's data handling, but you should double check that. If it goes outside or allows you to share with other parties, that's the point in which you got to be a little more careful on. Definitely check your data access protocols on that.
Yeah, and I think that kind of question, like just take out Dropbox and insert Zoom. Zoom just came out with a bunch of new, like you probably could put that in there and be like, what about this natural language search now for enter tool? And I agree with you. It's just like, yep, somebody's gonna have to do the deep dive to like understand what the policies are and stuff like that and how they are sharing that data. So I think this is super helpful. This is like, I learned a lot here, and hopefully our audience took something away from this. If nothing else, it's just to, what, it just might be time, if you have not had it in your company and you're one of the leads, or even if you're not, even if you're low rung, maybe it's time to like send that flag up the pole and say, hey, I think it's time that we have a conversation about this. We're all using these AI tools. Perhaps we need to have a quick conversation about what is and what is not important to us, and to Andy's point and everything else about, what do we really need to be checking out for? And maybe, hey, that leads to just something like using two-factor auth within the company. And that would be fantastic if that's what you got out of this. So, all right, that's it. Pretty much on time. We'll take it. And we will see you guys tomorrow for our Friday show. This was fun, guys. All right. Till tomorrow. Bye.
Aloha.